evening, afternoon. What we like to say, it's happy hour somewhere. It's happy hour here. We're calling this our cats and quarantinis. What is a quarantini, you might want to ask? Well, we each have our own. You can have your own. My quarantini today is a lovely mojito. Why am I drinking a mojito on Thursday at 4 o'clock? Well, like many of you, we have been at home all week, working hard, looking at the news, shaking our heads. Some of us are anxious and stressed. So we here at Basepaws thought it'd be really fun to connect for half an hour with y'all and just talk, answer your questions. We've got lots of questions that we want to talk about today, and just chat. So I'm joined here with our Dr. Chris Menges. He is our Chief Veterinary Officer here at Basepaws. Dr. Chris, hey, how's it going? What is your quarantini today?
Well, I've got a little bit of kombucha. There is a little bit of alcohol there.
Sure. Listen, we do not judge. Every quarantini is okay. We're doing all we can to survive during this crazy wild time. If you haven't heard, it is April. I know.
Somehow.
Not many of us are keeping track. So what we thought, let's take 30 minutes. Let's put our hair down. Okay, my hair is up today. By the way, I really took my time. I actually did my hair. But Chris, you can put your hair down. Yeah, let's have a little sip. And I just want to talk. I want to talk about what's happening in the cat world. I want to talk about what's happening in the Basepaws world. So what I thought we'd start with is a quick overview of the kinds of questions we've seen last week since our last Q&A.
Yeah.
Last Q&A, we talked about, what did we talk about, Chris? I forget.
Well, so last Q&A, we talked a lot about the breed report. So that first section of the report that we go into from there about percentages and kind of how to help read that report. But really, at the end of the day, that only makes up about half of the report that our customers are getting right now.
That's right. We talked about the breed report. Actually, that link is available in our YouTube channel, and lots of folks have read it and have viewed it because the breed report, it's a complicated report. It's always good, Chris, when you take us through it. You're so clear when it comes to explaining these slightly hard things to understand. I think we as Basepaws can do a slightly better job at visualizing it and explaining it, so we're definitely working on that. But after we had that Q&A last week, we've had all of these people write to us and say, hey, what about the health markers? You got this whole other section. So we thought it'll be really good to talk about the health markers today. How do you feel about that?
I think that's a great idea, especially like at this time, just to get a little bit of a break in the day that is kind of just finding a little bit of difference in every single day. Sometimes that's hard when we work from home, as we kind of get in these weird routines where we don't really get to talk and have.
Tell me about it. This is the weirdest.
just the worst and the weirdest. But yeah, really get these happy hour times and just times to have nice conversations and get to hear each other. And
cool. I love it. So we're going to talk about the health markers. I've got a few questions for you that I wrote down from our pet parents, and then we'll finish up with a few other kind of cat news, some things that folks are curious about right now. Yeah. So without further ado, health markers. Do you want to give us maybe just the highlight of what the health markers are, just a quick overview?
Yeah, quick overview, kind of in a generalized sense of the term. Our health marker report, we test for 38 markers that span for 16 different diseases. Now, we have to keep in mind that when we test for health markers, these are very specific diseases that we test for, and these are things that don't change over time. So like the breed report, where we're constantly learning and changing, the health marker report is kind of a static. We're able to test these sections and give kind of a determination about whether or not you have a cat that's at risk for one of these conditions. So yeah, we've got those up, and those are in the report, and we have some really great ways that we communicate those, whether you're clear or carriers, but we'll go through those a little more later as well.
Before we jump in, can you tell us a bit about what is a genetic marker, and if I have a marker, will I get this disease? And is it possible to have a disease but no marker?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we start to think about genetic markers are kind of really tiny small sections of the code that are connected to genetic diseases. And genetic diseases are diseases that are passed down from kind of parent to child. So when we start to think about how they're passed down, we really kind of watch through that and then do the testing to discover which markers are kind of associated and constantly passed down. Now, there's kind of two different types of markers. Most of our markers are what we consider causative markers. So those markers are the actual mutations that cause some sort of change in the body that allows for the disease to happen. So for instance, in polycystic kidney disease, that mutation causes the kidney wall to be a little weaker and allows for those kidneys to expand and fill with fluid.
I'm glad you brought up the polycystic kidney, PKD. Let's start with that marker. Basepaws has that in their report. I'd love to just get a bit more of what it means to be positive and negative, and if you have that marker, if you don't. I mean, it's everyone, every single cat parent I know knows about PKD. Basepaws tests for it. Let's dig into it.
Yeah, PKD is really well known because it's such a serious disease. One of the things about PKD that makes it really interesting is what's known as autosomal dominant. And so whenever we kind of think about the chromosomes, you get one from each of your parents. So what autosomal dominant means is that if you get one copy of the mutation, you will get the disease, or your cat will get the disease.
Oh, yes. A single copy. You don't need both. A single
copy. So that's why it uses that term dominant. So that means that the mutation copy overrides the normal copy in that sense of terms. So it overrides and causes those kind of disease markers. And so polycystic kidney disease is autosomal dominant. Autosomal dominant diseases happen more often because you only need one copy, and they're easier to transmit in that sense of the term. Now, with polycystic kidney disease, we actually really only see what are called heterozygous, or the ones that only have one copy of the mutation, because those that are born or kind of inherit both copies, the kidneys are so weak, most of those cats actually don't make it all the way to birth, or die quickly after birth from there. So polycystic kidney disease, yeah, those kidneys at about, if you do have a copy to about 6-ish years of age, the kidneys will start to kind of grow and begin to fail because their walls will kind of start to break down.
Oh, wow. So a few questions. I know that PKD is horrible. What happens if you have a marker for PKD? Will the kittens that are born from that cat, will they all inherit that marker?
Well, so if you do have a cat that is PKD positive, first off, it's not recommended to breed that cat because that marker is so dangerous. This has been particularly a problem that's been worked through with particularly the Persian breed to try and help the overall incidence within the Persian breed. And so first off, we really recommend testing, if you do have a breed that's predisposed to it, like Persians, recommend testing for it to make sure that you're not passing this genetic disease down the line. Now, if you do have a cat that comes positive, it allows you to really understand and look for signs and symptoms, as well as kind of start some preventative treatments. As those kidneys expand, kind of the disease process that they mirror is that of chronic renal failure. So we were able to institute some changes early on to help those kidneys survive for longer and help the cat have a better quality of life for longer.
Wow. I mean, it is a horrible, horrible disease. We all know it. And is it true that you can have PKD but not have a marker for it?
Yes, absolutely. So there are, when we start to think about, when we mentioned at the very beginning that genetic markers are very specific, there are always new mutations that can happen, and diseases that haven't, or kind of mutations that haven't been fully diagnosed yet. Now, most of the polycystic kidney disease that occurs in cats does come from the marker that we test for. But other than that, there are still a few markers or mutations that have not yet been discovered. If they are discovered, we'll of course be able to add them to our report. But up until that time, we can't really speak to whether or not your cat will get that specific
Sure. And last question about PKD. As a veterinarian, what is your recommendation to pet parents that have received their Basepaws report and they have a positive PKD result?
Well, number one is always contact your local veterinarian. You know, talk to them and let them know about the result. You know, they're as much as we can tell you about the disease and about the testing, they're really going to be the ones that manage the day-to-day as the cat goes into different stages or as the disease progresses a little bit to help
Sure.
and really manage that specific case, because they get so complicated that we have to make sure there's a lot of factors in there. So we always love for that veterinary communication to occur.
I would just echo that. When you get your report on your phone or on your computer, make sure that your veterinarian has access to that report. Make sure that the next time you go to your veterinarian, which should happen once a year, make sure that you bring that report with you. The veterinarian should know the positive markers. It should also know that your cat is all in the clear and healthy genetically. That will actually create a better relationship with your veterinarian. Do you agree with that?
I do. You know, we of course, we're also getting some great resources for veterinarians and customers up that should be coming out a little bit later this month that talks about breeding advice and kind of health advice for a lot of different things. So we'd love for you to take a peek at those. We'll be announcing those on our blog and on our website as well.
That's right. That's right. We're going to start working closer and closer with the veterinary community.
Absolutely.
Okay, so switching topics, I want to talk about another health marker that we test for. Again, it's a marker that we hear about all the time. It's a marker that is very close to Basepaws and kind of to our heart, because one of the people that runs this company, her name is Kristen, had a kitty that passed away from HCM. Can we talk a little bit about HCM and the markers that we test for?
Of course. Now, HCM stands for hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, which is a really kind of fancy way of saying that the muscles in the heart wall start to expand, and that causes the blood flow as it's going through the heart to be less efficient. These slower, less efficient parts, when it does go through, allows for the potential of clots to form. And so clots, anytime they start to come out into the body, can cause some very serious effects, like one of the common ones that we see in cats with HCM is called FATE, or femoral arterial thromboembolism. So clot gets caught down near the back end and causes some hind limb paralysis on there. Very serious and very terrible, but with our testing, we test for 2 variants of HCM. The HCM two different variants. That these are the only ones that are discovered in cats at this point in time. And the first one was discovered in Maine Coon. The second one was discovered in ragdoll. So that's why they're named that way. But we do every now and then, like they can see in different populations as well.
Right, right. Actually, that question comes up a lot. Even though they're called HCM variants in Maine Coons or ragdolls, in a polycat or in a cat which has ragdoll or Maine Coon as one of its core breeds, we still see those markers as positive. So it is irrelevant of what the breed is, as much as we need to just test all cats to make sure they don't have HCM. And the same question about HCM, you can still have HCM without the marker. Is that right?
Absolutely. It's actually, in the HCM case, we have more mutations than in the PKD case. So, and remember, in polycystic kidney disease, most of our cases were through this one genetic marker that we've already discovered. In the HCM case, there are a variety of ones that are still out there. In humans, they've actually identified, I believe, 35 mutations that cause HCM.
Right.
So we're working to kind of catch up to that phase and get those equal. We've got some studies. We, of course, collect samples, and then there's a variety of researchers around the world. We're not the only ones looking. We're not the only ones looking. It won't hurt our feelings if you support their research as well.
Absolutely not.
I know, like, say, NC State's always looking for certain breeds as well.
And you know, Basepaws, the coolest thing, one of the coolest things about us is that we're collecting so many samples that we will be coming out with research ourselves, so we can start publishing additional markers that are connected to feline disease. I mean, ultimately, the big goal of everyone is to find every marker so we can eliminate these genetic diseases by not breeding cats that have these markers. I mean, that is the perfect world.
Yes, that is ideal. That is the ideal world. We will, of course, take a little bit of time to get there, but we are working. We're on our way. We are getting close, if not the largest feline genomic database in the world at this point.
It's so critical for us to do that R&D and to find more markers so that we can contribute to the scientific community. That is very, very critical to who we are.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I want to talk about one more marker because I know it is prevalent and I know it's important. And that marker is factor 12. Can you take us through factor 12 and what that is?
Yeah, so factor 12 deficiency is when we think about how the blood clots, it actually uses a variety of kind of reactions to help the blood clot. And now when we talk about clotting, I mean like you get a cut and your blood clots, and so that you don't just continually bleed out the cut. Now in factor 12 deficiency, in this thing, there's 12 different factors. And so factor 12 deficiency is the fact that factor 12 is lacking in your cat's kind of clotting system. Now, this is extremely prevalent. We have a lot of cats that test either positive for it or are carriers. The reason I say these terms now is because factor 12 is actually what's called an autosomal recessive disease, which means you have to have two mutations, two copies of the mutation for the disease to happen. Now, if you just have one copy, so if you have one normal and then one mutation, that cat won't be affected by the disease, but can potentially pass that silent copy on. In factor 12, though, factor 12 does cause a little bit of increased bleeding time. The main time that we see it is in testing for clotting, as well as it's something that would be really important for your veterinarian just to know heading into surgery. Now, typically it doesn't cause kind of dangerous bleeding during surgery, but it may help your veterinarian just understand the situation a little more, and which is always so critical to think about the different factors and the different variables that go into something as serious as surgery, if it is something that's routine as a spay or neuter.
Right. No, I mean, again, this is so important to have a relationship with your vet and to be sharing these reports. Share this report every year because we are working super hard to add additional markers, to add more diseases, to add traits, something we did not have before. All of these things are being added to our report over the next year. Do you see a lot of value in updating your veterinarian once a year with the new markers? Do you not think that this is a really important thing just for the vets to know in general?
Well, it's always good to have these things in kind of like basically in the health record, having a consolidated record for your pet with vaccines, clinical diagnoses, and then, kind of any lab reports, of course, any clinical lab reports if you've had a pet that's been sick before, as well as genetic reports. It lets a veterinarian, when they start to treat your pet, particularly if it's a new veterinarian or you've moved towns as well, get that really good kind of picture of what your pet, of getting to know your cat.
And Basepaws will continue to add more health markers as we add them to our report, and you guys will be able to benefit from all the research that we're doing and adding new health markers. So that's the report. You've got 16 diseases, close to 40 different markers, multiple markers per disease. This is a report that before you would go and you would pay individually for disease or individually for the marker. And what Basepaws has done in the past year when we launched these reports is that we grouped all of these together in one test. Now, I want to remind our viewers, Basepaws started with just the breed report. And we had just the breed report for close to 2 years. And in the back burner, working super, super hard to add the health report. And we are still catching up to offering the health report to the folks that joined us in 2017, 2018, and even in parts of 2019, because the markers launched mid-2019. The question comes up all the time, where are my health markers? The answer is very simple. We are working hard to get them to you. Every week we are processing new samples, and in parallel, we're processing every single report we've already processed once, a second time. Every single customer that we've done a report for, we have to do it again to add the health markers to it. So if you don't have your health markers, we're super sorry. We're working as fast as we can. COVID-19 has slowed things down a little bit for everybody. Our lab is still open and we're still processing those samples, but I just want folks to know that all this really cool stuff that Chris just told you, if you don't have your report, please give us a little bit more time, have a little bit more patience. You will definitely have it. And then you can take advantage of all this new cool stuff that you've just learned. Thank you, Chris. I think it calls for a drink.
Cheers.
Cheers. What a wild new world we live in. Okay. So we have a few more minutes. And Chris, I want to switch topics completely. This is cat news. Cat news of April 2nd, 2020. So I want to tell you a quick story. Yesterday, we came across some new information about cats and COVID-19. It came in the form of a study that was published yesterday. It was published and very quickly picked up by media. Media tends to do that. It was picked up by Nature, which is kind of the go-to publication when it comes to vetted science, American Scientific, and a few other folks. And so we have reviewed the paper. Actually, our head of R&D and one of the most senior scientists in the company reviewed the paper, and we wrote a little blurb about how we read the paper, and we posted it on our social media because Basepaws really wants to be a core place for vetted news around cat care, especially right now. There's so much stuff out there that's a mess, stuff that's real, and we don't want to post any of that. We want to be very, very clear about the stuff that matters and the stuff that's real. But last 24 hours has been a mayhem. We have had hundreds of people email us, talk to us about this study. I'm going to turn the virtual mic over to you. And thank you. And we'd love to just hear your thoughts about the study. If you can take us through it. What was so triggering? Let's talk about it.
Well, so, the study that you are mentioning was the preprint of a study that was coming out of China that was looking at cats that were inoculated or exposed to cats and ferrets, as well as a variety of other species that were exposed to SARS-CoV-2, or as we commonly call it in the media, COVID-19 now. And it showed that this was a very small sample size of cats, so about 5 cats that were tested on there showed that cats that were exposed to it did still have some of the virus or detectable virus in kind of their upper respiratory system for multiple days after the exposure, which implied that the virus was able to kind of live and replicate for a little bit within that upper respiratory system.
And does that match what we saw last week from that cat in Belgium that also got very sick from someone? Is that the same thing or no?
Well, the cat in Belgium's a little bit of there's not enough information around that cat, unfortunately. Okay. The cat did test positive in the feces for kind of the viral RNA of COVID-19, but the cat was known to have previous problems with vomiting and diarrhea and respiratory issues. So there's a lot of questions about whether or not those symptoms were from COVID-19 or from just simply the diseases that were already in place.
Thank you for making that clear. Got it.
Yeah, so now when we start to think about this, it sounds very concerning that our cats could potentially be potentially carriers or something like that. But now if we sit back and we think about the original name of COVID-19 was SARS-CoV-2. And the reason that is because SARS, which came out in the early 2000s, is a coronavirus as well, and is 96% similar to COVID-19. So they're very, very, very closely related. This study was really done with that disease as well, and had a lot of very similar results. Now, we never saw that outbreak, cats being a large reservoir source, being able to infect humans or anything like that. And so we still believe, based off the data that we're seeing, that cats aren't one of the reservoirs or are able to pass it on to humans from there. We actually also haven't even had confirmed symptoms of a cat with it. It may just be that the virus can live for a little bit in there before the cat's immune system eliminates it.
The main issue that our pet parents had with this is that we're living in the world of anxiety and stress.
Absolutely. Yes.
And we don't want to add more anxiety and stress to our lives right now. The flip side of what other folks were saying was that we need to be aware. We need to be aware of the science that is coming out. So if you could summarize, what is it that we need to be aware of? What would you say based on this study?
Well, we need to be aware that this is a constantly evolving situation, both on the human and the animal side. We are following, precautions by the CDC, who reviews a lot of this as well, and constantly takes their precautions to give that great advice. And so we always have to be aware that we want to protect ourselves, protect our pets as best we can, but still at the same time, in any concerning, to always realize that we're still learning. This is a very early study with a very small amount of cats in a very laboratory setting.
Right.
So please keep in mind that the large amounts of studies that occur in the lab don't translate really effectively to real life as well. So sometimes there's a bit of a disconnect. Just because we can do it in a controlled setting doesn't mean that the world allows or nature really allows for it to happen.
Right. I will just say one more thing, that this is evolving every day. As news reaches us that pets in any way are affected, we will pass this news to you in the most clear and vetted way, without sensationalism. But we also will not just ignore it, and we'll try to present it in the cleanest, most scientific form. Do you agree with that?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we do, this is scientific language is in some ways an entirely different language itself. And we want to make sure that there's such an intense interest about that right now that we're able to help you understand that language, that we don't end up with confusion. Sometimes when science and media misinformation happens, just because of the way that things can be titled. But we want to make sure that sensationalist kind of titling that can happen in the full media doesn't come through Basepaws. We come through with the core information, the core takeaways, and really kind of the understanding that we need with each study and each evolving situation.
Exactly. And our scientists really review this stuff carefully. And the bottom line is we're just trying to be healthy, stay healthy, and keep our pets healthy. That really is the main purpose of all of this. Right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. We want everyone with their happy, healthy cats at home. I know hopefully y'all are enjoying your work from home with cats right now.
Stay home. Home is good. Home is where the cats are. That's what we say. Well, we've come to the end of our 30-minute Q&A. We hope you guys like these formats. We're going to keep doing them. Every week we'll be talking about something new, something genetics related, something very, very focused on keeping our cats healthy. That's really what we're here for.
Absolutely.
All right, Chris.
Thanks so much for getting this all set up.
One last cheers.
Cheers.
Hope you guys have a great happy hour. Stay safe out there.
Martini.
Cheers.
Bye.